Hey everybody, it's Julie again. Today I'm talking about pet peeves. I got a question once where someone asked me, hey, what are your things that just really bug you every time you come across them in published books? And I figured I would just highlight 10 kind of oddly specific pet peeves of mine that every time I see them in a book, I just kind of roll my eyes and grit my teeth and say, I really wish this person had chosen a different way to do this. And these are not all necessarily bad things, but they're things that get under my skin, and I'll explain why in each case. Number one, over-reliance on characters being able to read emotions in each other's eyes. Sometimes books really lean on this hate in his eyes and lust in his eyes, that sort of thing. And I get really tired of it, not only just because it's repetitive, but because it's not very realistic. How often can you tell just by what somebody's eyes look like that they're feeling a certain way? So I would like to see authors who use this a lot change things up, like at least get their eyebrows doing something or go into whole facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, because I think that is not only less repetitive but more effective. Number two, redundant dialogue tags. I have a whole separate video about this, but just in brief, that's when someone uses a different word instead of said or asked to try to jazz up their speech tags, and you end up with things like, oh yes, let's do that, she agreed. And that just catches my attention every time somebody does that. If somebody says, yes, let's do that, she agreed, there's no need to say that it's an agreement because the dialogue itself is an agreement, so you might as well just not use a dialogue tag at all or use said. And whenever I see those, I feel like I'm reading something by an amateur author who doesn't really understand which parts of the sentence need to be the parts that convey information. Number three, similes that don't actually give a clearer picture of what we're seeing. When you say one thing is like another thing and then the thing that you're comparing it to is less familiar than the first thing, I don't really understand why you're bothering to use a simile at all. An example might be water shooting into the sky like fistfuls of diamonds tossed into the air. Like, not only have I seen water thrown into the air a lot more commonly than I've ever seen anyone throw a fistful of diamonds, it's also kind of distracting because now I'm picturing a person throwing diamonds when I'm supposed to be picturing just water shooting up that no one is throwing. So I feel like it kind of distracts me from what I'm supposed to be picturing. And I feel like that there are better ways of describing what something looks like, or even romanticizing something that you want to paint as beautiful without pulling in these similes that actually just distract. Number four, when the author makes jokes in narration. This is a difficult one to explain because there are a lot of books I really like where there's a lot of author joking, but that's the entire tone of the book. Like, that's already been established as the type of book it is, where the narration is actually a presence. It's almost like the narrator is a character, and that can work really well. I really like it in, say, Douglas Adams or Lemony Snicket. But sometimes I'll just see one or two little jokes that authors will throw into the narration, that the character isn't making the joke, the character isn't thinking of the joke, but the author is making a joke to the reader that we're supposed to laugh at. And it actually makes me very uncomfortable because I start to feel the voice of the author there and I feel like I'm not supposed to. So it reminds me that the book is written, and it definitely distracts me from being immersed in the story. Number five, when child characters don't get help from adults or don't confess things to adults. This is sometimes necessary or realistic in certain contexts, but I've noticed an awful lot of, especially fantasy or crime-related stories, where teenage or younger characters would actually get a lot more help or a lot more realistically closer to solving a mystery or protecting themselves if they just told a parent or a trusted authority figure, and they'll come to a conclusion that the adult won't believe them, or that they're gonna figure it out on their own and get some kind of attention or recognition that they wouldn't be able to get if they just brought adults in. And I understand also that child characters sometimes make poor decisions because of their immaturity, but too often I think authors are leaning on kids not telling their parents things that they probably should tell their parents or other authority figures just so they can have a story. And whenever I get to a point where I'm reading a story that the child could have ended the story just by telling their dad, I start to feel like it's contrived and it's faked so that we can have something to read. So I'd like to see more kids telling their authority figures when their lives are in danger or when some kind of crime is being committed. Number 6, I hate it when characters start living on page 1. This happens all too often, especially if the most interesting part of the character's life starts on page 1. That's what you're supposed to do, but it can't feel like the person was literally born on page 1. They do need to have a past. They do need to have attitudes that have been developed over the years that they've been alive. They need to have relationships. They need to have preferences. They need to have history. And even if you don't focus on it too much, I feel like they do need to have a clear past that comes out in their interactions with other people and with their attitudes toward what they're tackling in the plot of the book, or else they'll feel like a cardboard character. Number 7, narration of the obvious. This is a little hard to explain, but I mean stuff like you'll see characters doing something that's plot relevant, and then the narration breaks away from what you've just seen them doing and explains to you stuff that you could have already figured out or almost figured out by what you just watched or what you're about to watch. I don't need to be told that it's unusual for dad to be home during the day if their child just walked through the door and was surprised to see them on the couch in pajamas. So I feel like context and well-placed character interactions can tell you everything you need to know about the things that you need to know in the story. So you usually don't need some of these breakaway narrations that I feel like a lot of authors are underestimating us by explaining these things to us. And some authors just do it so much that it starts to get tiresome. You start to feel like, why are you holding my hand? Do you think I'm not paying attention to what you've written? So I recommend that people narrate less and let us figure out more. Number 8, books that telegraph or foreshadow upcoming hijinks. This happens all the time when you have a character remark that they have a bad feeling about something, or somebody saying something like, what could go wrong, or you're worrying too much. And then, of course, disaster strikes in the obvious way. You'll have two characters sneaking off to a place that they're not supposed to go, and nobody thinks it's going to be dangerous, but of course it's going to be dangerous, and that's going to be an important plot point. So I really wish that, especially in dialogue, characters would not convey what is going to happen by denying that it's going to happen, or acting like it would be ridiculous for anything terrible to happen. So, but you do see this more often in children's books, and sometimes I think that they build that up so that there will be some kind of contrived suspense, but for me, most of the time, it just doesn't work. Number 9, characters who are mean for no reason. Sometimes, just so that we can have an antagonist or a villain, someone will suddenly appear and take an instant dislike to the main character. And it's fine if that ends up being something that we understand the reason for later and it doesn't feel contrived, but more often than not it does feel contrived. It does feel like somebody exists in the story just to provide a story relevant reason for the person to experience frustration or plot relevant antagonism. So what I would like to see more often is more nuanced disagreements and multi-layered character disagreements, because too often it'll just be somebody hates you on page 1 and then later you find out that it's because you liked the same boy, or because the person thinks that the character's mother has a relationship with them that they would like to have with their mother, or something like that. Just really one-dimensional reasons for somebody to hate the main character, and usually it's expressed so aggravatingly angrily, like that these people are doing terrible things to the main characters, just really out of proportion to what they should be feeling in these contexts. So you'll see these incredible plots to discredit or embarrass the main character just because, you know, we need a mean girl. But I would like to see, you know, even when it's in children's books, which necessarily are usually, you know, reduced in complexity so that you don't have too many threads, it still needs to make sense and feel like a real person would do these things. Because I've read a lot of books in the last few years that feel like a cartoon with their level of absurdity, with the coyote versus roadrunner type atmosphere going on, where they're just instant enemies and there's not really a lot of depth to it. So more depth, please. And finally, number 10, bad baby talk. I really hate when authors take babies or very young children and give them terrible dialogue that doesn't actually sound like the way very young children speak. And this also goes for people who are foreign characters who are speaking English or whatever language the book is rendered in. They're speaking it poorly, and it doesn't actually sound the way that foreign characters would speak English. So it reminds me of like when they have a cartoon caveman or something where he speaks with phrasings that don't actually represent the way that somebody speaks English when they're just learning it, either as a young child or as a second language speaker. So I wish that if authors wanted to use the alternate versions of speech for either foreign characters or very young children, that they would either do their research and listen to the way that these people actually do speak, or they just leave it out if they can't do it right, if they can't capture it. Okay, so those were my 10 oddly specific pet peeves. If you have any pet peeves you want to share, go ahead and put them in the comments. Thanks everybody for watching my videos, and I will see you next time.